Now, would you stand as you're able and join us in hymn number 153, "Oh, I Woke Up This Morning," and remain standing for the words of the covenant. Now join with us in our covenant, which begins, "Goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in truth, seek together in love, and to love one another." You may be seated. We will sing the children to their classes at this point.
Good morning. It's nice to see all your bright faces this morning. I'm appealing to our general fund today for our offering. I do have some very good news. We have met our pledge drive. Yes, this is great news. So please continue to give generously of your heart like you always do for All Souls. We'll now have the offering.
Thank you, Anthony. Join with us now the words of dedication for the offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create a just and compassionate society.
When Kendall originally suggested we do a pulpit swap, I asked her what she thought I should speak on, what she thought maybe would be a good topic, and she asked me to speak on something related to race and the coming together in my church of two churches, one that was predominantly African American in my own congregation that I'd been serving at that point for 8 years, that had been predominantly white for 90 years. And so she said, maybe you could talk about that experience and what you've learned about race. And then, since then, we had the resignation of the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, our national leader, over issues of race and concerns about hiring practices at the national office. And then some other executive staff members from our national office resigned. And then after that, as an outgrowth of all that, also the executive director of our Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association resigned. And so it's been quite intense few months in our national movement, particularly around issues of race. And so it became even more of an important topic. And then when we finally found a date when it would work, it turned out to be Father's Day. So that seemed a little bit awkward. But then Kendall reminded me that this is also Juneteenth, which is a significant holiday and celebration, particularly in the African American community. It dates back to 1865. When on June 9th, Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger landed at Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. So this was 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which happened January 1st, 1863. So today and this weekend, across the United States, there are events to celebrate this crossroads in American history. So trying to weave together Father's Day and Juneteenth, and try not to disappoint my beloved colleague Kendall. With. Now we see it in other places in the scriptures too. I know this isn't the most scriptural based church. If you brought your Bible, you can open it up and follow along. No. Bono, the lead singer of the band U2, has referred to David, that would be King David from the Hebrew Scriptures. He's referred to David as a blues man. If you've ever read the Psalms, which are attributed to David, you know that they have that minor key. David was a musician. He played the harp, which is an instrument that was a precursor to the guitar. So Dr. Nichols says David's about as much of a blues man as we could get, at least back in ancient Israel. So today, I don't have a biblical message for you. I know some of you will be very disappointed about that. But let's talk about a blues theology and what we might learn about our own lives and life itself from the blues. It's a theology, if you will, that has everything to do with this life.
Let's stand as you're able and sing hymn number 97. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
It's been 2 years since I sat on the chancel in the front of Morning Star Baptist Church in North Tulsa and was deeply moved. I had been asked by the pastor of this church, the Reverend Dr. Rodney Goss, to share a reflection in response to the killings of 9 people, 9 African Americans, during a prayer meeting in Charleston, South Carolina. It had happened just 2 days before. I'm sure you remember. Now, on the chancel, I was surrounded by some wonderful colleagues, some of whom I knew, mostly African American, some of whom I had just met for the first time. My seat was right in front of the choir. It actually felt like I was in the choir. I was so close to their voices and their vibrations and the beauty of it all. And they were all women in this choir. They were all African American, and they made me feel at home with their smiles as I entered the chancel, and with their verbal acknowledgments of amen and you preach it and other things while I was speaking. The church was packed, and I was proud to see a lot of Unitarian Universalists came. What came over me during the service was how honest the people were about naming the depth of the pain and the fear and the sorrow of that moment. And also about how healing and hopeful the service was at the same time. Unfortunately, that was the 5th service of its kind out of 7 that I've participated in black churches in Tulsa in the past few years. It began with a service after Trayvon Martin was killed, and another one for Michael Brown and others. And then this past church year, this current church year that we're just winding down, also in Tulsa, we had the killing of an unarmed African-American young man named Terrence Crutcher, who was shot with his hands in the air, walking away from the police. So all of these services have had the same spirit of looking death and hatred and fear and pain right in the eyes, while also engendering an incredible sense of hope and possibility. I've learned so much from these African American churches and especially from African American church music and musicians about how to stare down the fierceness of life while also leaving people with a thread of hope to hang on to. In the church that Friday 2 years ago after the shootings in Charleston, I could feel a little bit of what it must have felt like in black churches around this country back in 1963 when 4 African American girls were killed at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama on a Sunday morning by a bomb planted by members of the Ku Klux Klan who were determined not to let black people in America be treated as equals. The church has been an institution, it's been a place where African Americans have regularly gathered to help each other survive an absurd and often violent American culture and to affirm African American humanity against a society that has so often tried to deny it. And even though I don't always resonate with all the elements of especially of the theology and the doctrines and the dogmas in these services, I have a deep respect for the power and the dignity and the love that I've experienced in all of these services and these churches. Part of what I've discovered is what I'm calling a blues theology. Cornel West says the blues is that elegant coping with catastrophe that yields a grace and a dignity so that the spirit of resistance is never completely snuffed out. Blues music takes the trials and troubles and tribulations of human existence and reminds us that pain is as real as rain. But it doesn't end there. It doesn't leave us there. Blues, like a good church service, has the ability through its 12-bar bent note melodies to transmute painful circumstances into something that will cause you to tap your feet and can stir your soul. Blues can be unbelievably unhappy and filled with regret. And it can be a healing balm at the same time. It can make you cry and it can make you dance. If your life is like mine, it's a mixture of tears and toe-tapping good times. A blend of regrets and revelry. I've endured broken relationships and a broken heart, the death of loved ones, the death of dreams. I've done things in 1 second that changed my life forever. I have wished that I could turn back the hands of time. Am I the only one? The blues sings a song of sore feet and lost lovers. From let the good times roll to the thrill is gone. From the things I used to do to I'm tired of being a fool. From I've been down so long it looks like up to me. African-American theologian James Cone says that the blues tells us about black people's attempt to carve out a significant existence in a very trying situation. He says the purpose of the blues is to give structure to black experiences in a world where color has often meant rejection and humiliation. He goes on, through songs notable for their beat and their utter truthfulness, the blues singers sought not to escape the world, but to make life bearable. The blues tells us about a people who refuse to accept an unjust society. It was a form of artistic, and it is a form of artistic rebellion and survival. In his book called The Spirituals and the Blues, Dr. Cone explains the difference between blues songs and African American spirituals. Whereas spirituals, like the one Anthony played so beautifully and soulfully a moment ago, the spirituals help people survive the hardships and the injustices of this world with promises of a transcendent other world where all the wrongs will be made right in heaven. You can endure this injustice, you can endure this heartache and pain and suffering because a sweet chariot will carry you to a land of peace for eternity. And that's been the saving grace and hope of the spirituals. But blues music is about finding ways to embrace the reality and the truth of this world without substituting otherworldly answers. Cone wrote, "It is not that the blues reject God, rather they ignore God by embracing the joys and the sorrows of this life, such as those of a man's relationship with his woman, or a woman with her man, or people with one another." In the words of B.B. King, "Oh, worry, 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 baby. Worry is all I can do. Oh, my life is so miserable, baby, and it's all on account of you. I gave you a brand new Ford, but you said, I want a Cadillac. I bought you a $10 dinner, and you said, thanks for the snack. I let you live in my penthouse. You said, it's just a shack. I gave you 7 children, and now you want to give them back." Or Albert Collins, who wrote, "If trouble was money, babe, I'd swear I'd be a millionaire. For I'd buy you the whole world and still have money to spare." Blues music tells us that no matter what we're going through, no matter what it is, we can bend our lives like notes on a guitar and turn them from periods of low down kind of blues into a love song. From a I woke up this morning and I can't find my shoes kind of blues into a caress me, baby, like the wind caresses the trees. I want you to love me, baby, like a soft summer breeze. Our lives are like the blues. The blues is not born of perfection, The blues seeks to redeem imperfection. Isn't that what we're all trying to do? To redeem imperfection, even our own imperfections and the imperfections of our own lives, broken expectations, disappointments, discouragements, betrayals. To take the cords of our blessed and broken wings and learn to fly. And learn to love. And to leave this world just a little bit better than how we found it. Let's face it, we weren't born into a world that makes a whole lot of sense. We weren't born into a country that is a finished product, especially as we strive to create a nation with equality and justice for all. What I love about the blues theology is that it does not try to appease us. It does not try to get us to accept the suffering and injustice in this world with promises of some other world or some other life. If we're going to get it, if we're going to have some joy, we're going to have it here. Well, we still have breath and we still have life in us. The blues uses music and poetry to help make the challenges of this life bearable so that we can keep working to transform the world for better and for a better future right here. To create heaven here on earth. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen here. So let's do what we can. And the blues kind of, in those difficult moments, in those discouraging moments, sometimes gives us that, or music or something. What is it that does it for you? But something like the blues that helps us to turn those difficult things, that anger, rage, disappointment, pain, into something with which we can make a difference in the world. In my message at Morning Star Baptist Church, that fateful Friday, I said, even as our nation continues to take important steps towards the promise of equality, and even as this generation strives once again to make real the idea that all people are created equal, we continue to reap the painful harvest of centuries of racist ideology that has seeped into our systems and structures and subconscious in so many ways. Which is a painful reminder to us, those of us here who are Unitarian Universalists and who are grappling with the upheavals in our own denomination. As we strive to work to create for ourselves and for our children and for future generations a religious tradition that might one day live up to the promise of being a house of hope for all people. Our Unitarian Universalist churches are so rooted in American values like freedom and justice for all and the ideas of democracy that we're so rooted in American values and American history that the struggles in our churches often parallel the struggles that are happening outside in the wider society. So with everything happening today, including just on Thursday, the acquittal of the officer in the Philando Castile case in Minnesota, and so much else, I'm reminded of the Philando Castile case. If you're not familiar with it, that was a gentleman who was pulled over. He had his girlfriend and his girlfriend's baby were in the car. This was in St. Paul, Minnesota, and they were pulled over, and he said to the officer, as soon as he was pulled, they were African-American, as soon as he was pulled over, he said, "Officer, I just want you to know, I do have a gun in the car. I am a registered gun owner, and I just want to make sure you're aware of that, and I'm going to reach for my driver's license." And as he was reaching for his driver's license, they have all this on video, the police officer got spooked, and he shot him, and he died right there in front of his girlfriend, who captured it on video herself, and this 2-year-old baby. So this was just a tragic situation. the officer in Tulsa who just got off as well, who shot this gentleman who had his hands up, and then we have video of the whole thing in Tulsa, Oklahoma as well. That happened about 3 weeks ago. So I'm reminded of this poem by the late, great African-American poet Langston Hughes, who said, "Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be. Let America be America again, let it be the dream it used to be. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. For all the dreams we've dreamed and all the songs we've sung and all the hopes we've held and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that almost died today. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be, the land where every man is free. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be." If we're ever going to have a land of liberty and justice for all, we're going to have to work for it. So let us get to work building America and building a Unitarian Universalist, building churches, a country and a church that are not yet, but yet must be. Places of liberty where all of us are free. That means a land where the police treat everyone equally, where our money goes into schools that are well-funded and high-tech rather than prisons that are well-funded and high-tech, where our churches and our neighborhoods are free of gun violence, where black men and white men and women and people of every hue and kind and class are able to get along and get a job and get an education and get a life and get a piece of the world they dream about. And we should not and will not settle for a culture or a country or a church that puts one race above the other. But let's remember that our dreams will only be dreams unless you and I vote and march and sign petitions and build real communities with people who are different from ourselves. The idea is that despite it all, we can bring some kind of heaven here on earth. And if we're going to have it, we're going to have it here. And if we can't do it, we're going to die trying. That's a blues theology. It's an act of creative resistance. And on this Father's Day, we must give thanks to the father of the blues, W.C. Handy. I invite you today to consider what it is that you can do to creatively transform your trials and tribulations, your anger into love, your sorrow into compassion, and your heartbreak into something of value for the world. What helps you to bear this life and its struggles? And what inspires you to work to change it for the better? Apparently, coming to church is one thing, coming to All Souls. But is it also music? Is it meditation or poetry? Is it painting or dance or movement? How do you go about transmuting and transforming your pain into something life-giving? In my way of seeing it, we all have to become like blues musicians. and learn not to run from our trials and our troubles, but to redeem them. Isn't that what life is about? Turning our heartbreak and our losses into something of value. It's a kind of a spiritual alchemy. It's like taking the cold, hard steel of life and turning it into gold. Happy Father's Day. I hope you've got the blues.
Now stand in body or in spirit and join us in hymn number 162. If you're using a hymnal, I'm going to lay down my sword and shield.
Before we leave, I want to say what a great pleasure and honor it is to be with you today, to be here in Kansas City at All Souls. My church, we share the name All Souls. It's a beautiful name. I'm glad it's not All Saints. I don't think I could lead a church of saints. I'm not good enough for that, but I do like that we don't think we're saints. We're just a bunch of souls trying to get through this life together. May you go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, help the suffering, honor all life. Go and be blessed and be a blessing. Amen.